What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, Andre Young returns to the show. Now, you guys know that I've been having a number of people back on the show because I've wanted to talk about their growth from where they were the first time we chatted till now. Because no matter what level we're at, we're constantly growing. And so Andre Young was recently one of the movement makers at Growth Now Movement Live, and he blew everybody away with his short amount of stage time that he had. And so I was like, dude, we need to have you back on the show. I think you guys are going to love this conversation because if you go back and listen to the first episode, we talked about relationships and the 7 ways to love that Andre had in his first book and so on and so forth. Since then, he's really grown his corporate consulting and speaking engagements and things like that within his business and is really focused on something he calls the Leader 7. And this is what the language is that we need to speak as leaders and also what we are expecting as people who end up getting led at some point in our life. Like, what do we need to be led in the right direction? And how do we figure out if we're speaking to our employees and the people who follow us in the right way? I think you guys are going to love this conversation. I was able to go over to his house and we did this live and in person. We obviously had a great time because Andre is a good friend of mine. And I think you guys are going to learn a lot, but also have a good time listening to this conversation. So I won't take any more of your time, and let's get into the conversation with Andre Young. Andre, man, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. As always, I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
For sure, man. I went back and looked before we set this up of when the last time you were on, and I think you were like episode 67, but it was November of 2017 or something like that. Yeah, it was a crazy long time ago. You're talking about a year and a half. And part of what I'm doing now with the show is I'm doing these in-person conversations with people that have been on before to really talk about the growth that they've had. Because it's not always about the journey from rock bottom to success. It's then what do you do with that success to kind of go forward from there. And you're somebody who I see all the time. We hang out pretty often. And to see the growth that you've had and the growth even that I've had, and we've kind of shared in this crazy 10x leap in the last year. And it's been a journey together. So I'm excited to have you back. But first I wanted to start by saying congratulations on being a new dad, even though you've already had kids, but a new one.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been such a great experience. My oldest daughter, she's about to be 20, so I can't even believe those words are coming out of my mouth. So right now, 19, 16, 11, and now 3 weeks. So it's been a joy having her, and then a joy watching my wife of 10 years now become a mom and see her in that way has just been great. So thank you.
Yeah.
And back at you, congratulations on success and the Growth Now movement. I was there. I was a movement maker. It was such an awesome experience for everything that you did, accomplished, and the people that you put together was just an amazing experience. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Now, you know, it's funny because we talked a little bit before I hit record about how it was a labor of love and it was a connection, but then what's important is you start to pay attention to who are people talking about, who do they see on the stage, and you are somebody who, even though you had a glimpse of time, people were like, wow, I wanted more from Andre. And so this is a great tool, obviously, on the podcast to give them more from Andre because there is so much more. There is so much depth.
Well, I hope so.
Dude, okay, that's it, guys. You know, go. Actually, the point of this episode is to say go back to listen to episode 67 or whatever your number was, and it was funny because you were actually one of the first people on my relaunch of when it was just me, and the growth of the show and the growth of my business, which I just mentioned to you before. I'm not a big numbers guy, meaning like I don't even look at my download numbers anymore. I never really looked at like I'm not money driven. I'm driven by impact, and I looked at the growth of my business just by chance because I was looking at a couple things, and my business has grown from this year time last year 270%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just didn't realize it. And I think sometimes when you
are just living in your purpose and you're enjoying what you're doing and you're making enough to pay the bills, you don't realize the actual growth that's happening. Like you look at the bank account and you went, I just went, holy shit, let's figure out actually kind of what happened. And I know you're kind of in that realm too in the last year. So I want to get in, we're going to get into your big revelation that you just hit not that long ago. We're going to get there. But what has life been like over the last year for you as far as the evolution in you evolving now?
Oh, life has been fantastic because I believe there's different definitions of success. And one of the scariest things is that we have one linear definition. You ask most people what their definition is, and it's like, well, once I chase it and catch it, then I'll be happy. And I'm like, okay, well, my definition of success was what kind of lifestyle do I want to live as a person, partner, parent, professional, and more.
Yeah.
And being able to grow my business and impact the people the way I wanted to impact has allowed success in all of those different areas. So as you said, I don't look at numbers anymore. I sit back and look, and I remember a time where I couldn't even pay my bills. I remember I was eating spaghetti for a year straight and having 3 kids half the time, and to be able to pay my bills and do different things and just have joy with every day that I get to get up and do what I get to do has just been phenomenal. And over the past year, being able to add to my business and add different genres. Now we're in high schools. I had no clue that was ever going to happen. I worked as a therapist in high schools, alternative schools and such for years. I said, I'm never going back. And all of a sudden I find myself back there doing student assemblies and then personal development days or professional development days with teachers, then on college athletics and corporate, and now sitting down with executives doing executive mentoring along with other programs. Who knew? Like I knew what I had, but I didn't know the magnitude of who would want it. And you sit back and say, wow, this is something.
Yeah.
So that has been amazing from going from an employee, because I was an employee for forever. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, you're an employee until you don't have to be.
Yeah.
And then having a business and having 12 staff while being an employee, because still had bills to pay. And then starting so now you're a business owner. And then with the transition, because we were operating and, focusing on people who wanted more. So from a volunteer perspective, I want more out of life, so I'm going to come. Then making that transition and saying we're going to be for the mandatory, quote unquote. So we're going to go to a company that says this is the direction we want to go. This is the culture we want to have. This is the type of people we want to have. Hey, people, show up. My job to make you love it. Coach says, hey, team, show up. It's my job to make you love it. So I had wonderful people. But when I was sitting down with people, they were like, oh, I want you. So I said, And I love doing the work. You made a comment, too, when you talk about becoming a success.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article a while back called Success, ... Now What?
That's so powerful, man. Like, it's funny that you're even talking about this right now because I just interviewed a guy last night. I don't know if you saw my Instagram stories. I talked about it. Interviewed the lead guitarist for Bret Michaels' band, which, these are guys that play in front of 100,000 people, et cetera. And he talked about that. Like I do ask the question, what's your definition of success? And he goes, it's funny. When I was young, I saw these people that I admired, like Kiss and Van Halen, play this local theater with 30,000 seats. By the way, that's a humongous place to play. And I think about my live event next year is 500 people, and that seems humongous. 30,000 people. And he goes, and I thought that's what success was. And he goes, and I played the venue, and I walked off the stage, and I felt so empty. And I tried so hard to feel the feeling that I thought success felt like, and it wasn't there. And obviously there's more to that, and people can go listen to that episode, but he talks about what he found out what it really was. But exactly, success, what you thought success was, now what? And that's such a powerful statement. So like, what is it with you? Like you go, okay, I've reached what I thought was the milestone of my dollar amount, which I thought was comfortable, what I thought was success, what I thought I could go to my buddies and say, hey, look, not that you would do that, but you can do that now. And then what? You know what I mean? Like that's the question. So like you've had the growth specifically over the last year is what we're talking about here, year and a half. But now what? Like what is it that fulfills you?
Well, for me, I mean, it's a couple of different things because as we all are, we're all different roles. So success for me is always going to be the standard of can I support my family and the lifestyle that I desire based off of the concepts that I've created? So the things that I've created, and I can give speaking engagements and leadership programs and just the different things that we offer, can I support my family with that? Boom. That's one. Then my definition of success and the lifestyle I want to be the greatest husband ever.
Yeah.
I want to be the greatest dad ever, and I want to enjoy it while I'm doing it. So that right there has really become my definition of success. And I think the hardest part for that is remembering to have fun while we're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once we do that, that's the cherry on top of success, because there's positives and negatives to everything. Obviously, the positive of success is that we earned it. We did it. We can claim it. But the downside is one of three things is going to happen. You're either going to get your definition of success, but you're not the person you need to be to keep it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I've been there. I've been divorced before. I've had the $50,000 car sitting in the driveway. I had the house. I had all of that stuff, but I wasn't the person I needed to be to take care of it. You get your definition of success. It's not how you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
That's depressing and lonely, because now what? I've been there as well. Or you're going to get it. Everything's great. It's great. And then life is going to gut punch you and change everything.
Yeah.
And then now what? So my first thing is always, when we become successful, the first thing we do is take care of who and what's been taking care of you. So you became successful from a business standpoint. When I got there, I said, okay, I'm looking at it. I was so busy trying to get new business that I needed to be mindful not to that I still needed to add value to the clientele that I already had.
Yeah.
How do I go back and continuously raise my value? Now, our financial dream leader, John Conover, said this to me one time, and I will never, ever forget it. He said, if you can raise your value higher than your customer stack of money, you'll always be okay.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I wake up to that. Is one of the mantras that I always think about. So going back after being successful and taking care of who and what's taking care of you, is surprising how much more they're willing to take care of you, because you keep adding value. They can't deny it. And they know you and you're already there.
It's huge. I mean, it's overvaluing. But when we talk about leveling yourself up to that certain point, it's about self-care, I think, more than anything else.
Goodness.
Constantly learning, connecting with the right people, listening to podcasts like this, reading the right books. That's what gives you the opportunity to add that value.
Absolutely.
So so often people are like, oh, well, I've learned it and people are buying my stuff now. They're just going to keep buying it. Well, no, that you have to be a step ahead of the game at all times. And so, when I look at what I do, and I own a podcast production and coaching company, and when I first started coaching, I was really big on the 5 steps to grow your audience. And I was teaching these people to grow their audience, how to rank up in iTunes, how to get the credibility, how to do all these things. Well, guess what happened? Everything changed.
Yep.
140,000 podcasts have launched in 2019 alone, and we're only in June.
Wow.
So when we look at that, we go, okay, and I think I just heard a stat, it's like over 700,000 active podcasts currently on iTunes. And so there's no more just growing your audience. So I now teach my clients how to utilize the podcast in other ways. Well, I had somebody steal all of my information, and now he's teaching the 5 ways to grow your audience, but it's obsolete.
Right.
He's 15 steps behind.
Right. So
you constantly have to stay a step ahead of your competition and 15 steps ahead of the people who are trying to steal your information.
And that's you touched on so many great points. I mean, the stealing of information as entrepreneurs and creators and visionaries, and we were just talking about this before the show. I think God blessed us both with this ability to create, and I love it. Wouldn't change it for the world. But at first, I was treating it like I was eating a prison dinner. I wanted to, have my arm over my stuff, don't look over my shoulder.
Yep.
I didn't, I was so cautious, especially after going through a divorce. I needed to protect everything.
Yeah.
Now I just give it, man. And if you want to steal it, I mean, Godspeed, good, but you're not going to be me, just like nobody can be you. So be the greatest you can be, and always be developing. We talked about self-care. You mentioned self-care. I mean, that's a huge part of personal development and success. So Bruce Langford, I was just on his show, and I met him at the Growth Now movement. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bruce, if you're listening, you're amazing. And
He's
if you don't know
dude.
Bruce, please check him out. And he's great in mindfulness. And he asked me, do I meditate? How do I take care of myself? And years ago, I did used to actively meditate and do that. Now my self-care and meditation really comes to, I give myself what I need when I need it, and preferably maybe a little bit before I need it.
Yeah.
But the power in bookending our day. When I wake up, I have a mantra. When I wake up every Sunday, I have my goals for the week. Therefore, I have my daily plan of what I need to do to get to the end of my week. So I didn't make it to the end of the week. I dominated my week. I won my week by winning every day. I bookended my day a couple years ago. Somebody asked me, you ever have one of those bad mornings? And I said, not to be cocky or condescending at all. I said, I haven't had a bad morning in years, through starting You Evolving Now. Because every night I was looking for quotes to give to my, the people who follow.
Yeah.
Then every morning I was coming up with my own question related to that quote, because there's power in questions. People like quotes, but when you're asked a powerful question, you can't deny it. Right. So every day for 5 years, I was doing that. And I realized the power of bookending our day. And then if we could put something in the middle of our day that helps take care of ourselves, and everybody's going to have a different answer to what that is. But the better I am in taking care of me, then I get to go do that. And when we're living our best life and taking care of ourselves, it's easier to preach it because you're living it.
Yep.
So it's hard for me to have those bad days. Now I have tiring days.
Sure.
I'm exhausted some days.
Yeah.
But I get to do these days. I get to do this.
Yeah, and that's really a mindset shift, right? So like when we look at how are we looking at things, and there's a big revelation when I decided to say to myself, life is happening for me, not to me. Mm-hmm. You get rid of that victim stance. I get to do these things. It's my choice. I mean, that's the life I've lived. And look, if you're listening to this and you have a job and that's your choice, cool. Look, so often we look at these people in positions like mine where people tend to be listening all over the world and they talk about entrepreneurship and how great it is. But there's something great, too, if you just want to be an employee, right? But it's about if you're happy doing that.
Yep.
The problem with being an employee is when you say, I'm unhappy being an employee, and you continue to choose to do that. That's the problem. Look, it could be going and finding another job or a different position within the organization or whatever. But again, it's self-care, it's self-awareness, it's knowing where you want to be. The greatest tipping point in my life is when I finally realized what somebody asked me, like, what is the theme throughout every single person you've interviewed? And I actually had to stop and think because I never thought about it. And I realized it's self-care. It's the 3 things that they did every single day to ensure their success, however they define success.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And the 3 things they did every day was always to serve themselves. And I'm a giver. And you know this about me. Like, I'm always trying to give. I'm always trying to connect. I'm always trying to make sure you're taken care of before I'm taken care of. When I look at my Growth Now Movement Live in the event, you've made how many connections from there?
Yeah.
Like you were just on Chuck's story. You guys were FaceTiming each other, And so I love that. Like, that made me happier than anything I could have gotten out of Growth Now Movement Live. But I also had to step back and go, I'm draining myself. I'm not being able to give as much as I want to give. How do I fix that? And it's to make sure within my routine, I'm doing the things that make me happy.
Well, and part of that too, because I talk about bookending your day, and we talked about learning, whether it's however it is we do that. And as I start to drain, because we all can do it. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's amazing how much time you spend with other people, but is also alone.
Yeah. It's a lot of alone time.
It's a lot of alone time that people don't see. And my wife being home for 6 weeks with the baby, she's now getting to see what I do every day and what it takes to make it run, which I'm glad she gets to see it. But it's taking care of our relationships as well. And when I wrote 7 Ways to Love, it's so important that we take care of our relationships. Because we can't go run into our relationships just because we need them or when we're down. You wouldn't want somebody else coming to you that way. So it's really maintaining those relationships. And, I have 4 kids in a business, and you know what I mean? And a pig. We got a pet pig.
Yeah,
you've met Hamilton.
He nibbled my ankle the last time I was here.
He did.
I want to say that it was a love nibble, but I'm pretty sure he was just hungry.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He might love you, but he wants to take a bite every now and then. But being able to, nurture those relationships so you have them to go to when you need them. But it also gives me a time sometimes just to be Dre.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting down with friends and it's not a business conversation and it's not talking about numbers or a deal or whatever like that, and I just get to be Dre. We all need that. The employees, I love to piggyback what you mentioned when you said if you're an employee, because not everybody wants this great or whatever magnificent lifestyle that some of us vision, or wants to be an entrepreneur or wants to be a boss. And I'm actually doing a talk for Riverfront Federal Credit Union. Great company. I love everything that they're doing. They're fantastic. And we're talking about how to change and how to manage change. But one of the things from employee standpoint, most employers, and if your employer is doing this, you should contact somebody ASAP. Most employers aren't coming to your house and waking you up at gunpoint to go to the job that you applied for.
Right.
So if you're going to be at work, maybe, and you don't want to be great, some people are there for the benefits. Some people are there, they got a great dental program. No matter why you're there, if we could all do just these 3 basic things, can we come to work and smile? You chose to be there. When we walk through the door back home, can we smile? I got 4 kids. One got a set of lungs on her. She's that small, 6 pounds. How you got this type of lungs? But I chose to have you. So I'm going to smile. It's a beacon of positivity that most people are going to gravitate to, and the negative Nancys aren't. Good.
Yeah. And guess what? Even if you're forcing that smile, it makes you it makes it real. Like, have you ever done that test of, like, if you're, like, in a room full of people and one person just starts laughing, they all start laughing? It's contagious. And then your fake laughter becomes real laughter.
Exactly.
And same thing with a smile.
Yeah. Put a smile on. It's amazing what it does for people, for you and the people around you, and your partner when you come home.
Yeah.
Can you do your best? Whatever your job is, can you do your best? And then can we be our best? It's not enough just to do our best. Can we be our best self? So when things are going great, because I'll do work-life harmony and leadership for these organizations, it's amazing what trickles on into work from home and everything else that's going on. And my wife calls me every day about her job. So it's like, let's take care of that, but let's smile, do your best, and then be your best. Because one day that employee may want more. You, if you're listening, may want more. You don't want the negative stuff following you and say, oh, well, so-and-so was like this or was talking like this or never even smiles. Why would I promote? When it's time, you don't know when you're going to want more. But when you do, you sure wouldn't have wanted to mess it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't go back. You can't go back and change that stuff in your relationships, in your business. And, the last time you were on the show, I think the title was The 7 Ways to Love. We really kind of focused on that. But again, as people are listening to this, and if they've heard the last episode and they're listening to this, they hear the evolution in your messaging as well. That's life. You evolve. You can't rely on things that were years ago. And you talked about going into these organizations and teaching leadership, which you've had this huge epiphany recently of the Leadership 7 is what you call it.
Yeah.
And you told me about this a couple months ago at this point probably, and I was blown away by what it is, how powerful it is. And this is what you really are diving in on right now. And it's kind of like the next phase in your life as Andre Young, the motivator, the guy who's going out there and changing lives. And so let's talk a little bit on that and how that even came to fruition, because I know you were in the middle of writing a different book.
Yeah, I was writing the 4th book that's coming out, and it's called 7 Ways to Lead. So I was writing it, and I got to like the final chapter, and I started writing the chapter called The Leader 7. And it's the 7 languages that employees or players or athletes or students even, they want to hear, they need to hear, and they benefit most from hearing from their leaders to inspire, to motivate, and move forward. And I realized as leaders, we need to be able to speak all 7.
Yeah.
We need to be able to speak all 7, but I also want to make it easy for you to understand how everybody's language is, what their language is, how to speak it in casual times, because as a leader, we're going to have to be able to speak it in casual times, whether it's walking through the office, walking through the building, or walking in our household, whatever, But then also in those hard conversations, because as leaders, if we cannot have the hard conversations, the difficult ones, then we're not going to be leaders for very long. People come home, my kids come home, my teachers hates me, or my boss hates me. Maybe, but not likely.
Right.
Most leaders didn't wake up and say, how can I ruin so-and-so's day today?
They are out there.
They are out there. There are a few monsters.
They're rare, but they are out there for sure.
So typically that's not the case. What happens is we're not being able to speak as leaders our people's languages. So the employees, the athlete or whomever, has a top 1 or 2. If we know your top 1 or 2, then we have to actively choose not to speak it. And from a good leadership, and I don't mean managers or supervisors, because anybody can do that. Typically, people got promoted because they were good at one thing. And they got promoted. You sold $1 million worth of product, and now you're going to be the sales leader. Well, you haven't proved that you can lead anybody. You proved that you could sell $1 million worth of product. So when I first started as an employee, I was knowledge and advancement. I wanted to know what you knew so I can be you one day. And respect. Now, respect is huge because when you start talking to people about what their definition of respect is, hey, do I have the tools to be successful? Don't speak over me. Obviously, don't call out my name. How do we email? How do we text? These are huge things that seem common sense. I say I do common sense leadership, but a lot of times people don't know or forget.
Yeah.
They're so used to speaking their language.
It's a being mindful. I mean, going back to Bruce Langford, it's being mindful about the language that we're using, and that's kind of how you show respect. I think sometimes we get so caught up. You know, I've been a manager of many people at times in my past life before I was an entrepreneur, and you get so caught up sometimes in the emotion of what's happening, and especially in a world where, like, yes, I was a manager of many, but I also had managers. It was a trickle down effect, and it's really about self-awareness and being able to kind of control that.
Well, and I talk about in 7 Ways to Love how to love up at work too, because it's like 7 ways to love at work. Can we do this? Is this legal? But middle management, which you just mentioned, is a tough world to live in. I mean, you got numbers that you need to make from up above and the pressure to meet those, and then you have the gripes from the people down below you who don't understand or maybe see or even care about the bigger picture.
Right.
And you're in the middle of all of that with 200 plus more emails than the people your supervisors. So it's a world. Like, how do we catch those? Our middle management being good as well. And languages change. I had one of the best supervisors of all time. One of my final jobs as an employee. Guy was great, but he wasn't speaking my language. Because languages change, and I tell companies, you got to do this, or teams, you got to do this once a year because it changes. So I went from knowledge and advancement to flexibility and respect. So he was talking to me one time. I really like what you're doing here, and this would be great, and you would be great in management, and we'd love to get you promoted. Why don't you do this, this, and this? And I'm looking at him. Now, it's a great, great man. I enjoy him. We speak to this day. But in my mind on that day, I am like, it is a Saturday afternoon, and you are wearing a suit, standing here talking to me. This conversation is not resonating with me
that's not what
at
I want.
all. Now, if he would have came to me from a flexibility standpoint, hey, what ideas do you have here that can make what's going good, what's going great, what do we need to change? What do you think? Boy, we would have had a great conversation. Hey, how would you like a flexible schedule? I know you got kids. What can we do? Whole different conversation.
Yeah.
So being able to know and always be able to have the people's ear and then be able to say what needs to be said, great, good, or indifferent. It allows so much more freedom, a lot less stress, and now everybody's needs are met. Yeah. Biggest way, and Emerson Eggerichs said this, and he's more relationship-based, great, please look him up. He said the biggest way to impact anybody is to meet their deepest need. But we're so busy trying to meet the company number need. Yeah. And as a coach, we need to keep our job, all of these different things. We're focusing on the wrong need.
Yeah. Or we focus so much on our need. To take it out of the business and into our lives, we focus so much on our need. Imagine if we focus on somebody else's need.
Oh, yeah.
In that conversation, what's your deepest need? How can I help you? I mean, I say this all the time on my show, and so people know that are listening. Like, I end almost every conversation with, let me know how I can help you. And I've been good friends with you for a year, and I still almost end every conversation with, let me know how I can help.
And I
whatever
love
you're
that,
working
by
on.
the way.
And but it's true, and I want to help people. Is there a small part of me that knows if I help others, it comes back? Yeah, that's the rule of reciprocity. But I don't do it for that reason. I do it to actually help.
It's not in a manipulative manner.
That's it. And so, you said something that kind of struck an aha moment for me when I think about, okay, if I were to own a company that had employees, which I'm a solopreneur, I don't have employees. I have a couple contract people, but no full-time employees. But if I said, how can I make sure, like, I know you need a flexible schedule. How can we make that happen? Most companies would never say that or think about that. But God forbid you make it flexible for them, and then they produce so much more during the time that they're there. That's what people don't realize. Like, tell me the last time, dude. I'm attesting to this. I'm confessing this to all my former employees. I've never worked a real 8-hour day for somebody else. Like I dicked around for 6 of the 8 hours, and then maybe put in 2 hours of work.
Well, I tell you what, as an employee too, I don't think I have either. Because as an employee, well, one, for me personally, I couldn't wait for lunchtime. Whatever time that was going to be, I need to eat. Don't bother me while I eat. And or then you have the stop bys at the office, if your office door is open or things like that. And now you're having conversation, and this conversation lasted 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour. And although it may have provided relief in your day, rarely have any of those conversations ever made you better.
Right.
And now as a business owner or solopreneur, I like how you said that, I got to remember to eat. I have to remember to eat, and I don't have those things, and I'm just grinding. So if we've hired the right person, and that person has a capacity and self-awareness to know that I can do this and work better in this way, how can we be flexible? Now, not every job or team has that, but here's a tip that I would tell, if you guys are listening to this, I do a Ru-Way one-on-one mentoring. Some of these companies are absolutely awesome, or athletics. They bring me in and I meet once a week with somebody for 5 weeks. And on the 4th week, we do our U. So I do REU, rating yourself. And then we do embracing the obligation. There's always some crap work we got to do that we don't want to do, or it's been done, or it would have been done.
Yeah.
But the U has been powerful. And the U says this: I want you to list, and if you're listening to this, when you go home, I want you to do this and do it immediately before you get too busy, B word, right? Write down a list of all the significant people in your life. Significant doesn't mean you like them. It means you spend a lot of time with them. I do some of this work for blue-collar factories, right? You're on the line 12 hours a day with this person next to you. 5 days a week, that's 60 hours. I don't spend 60 hours unabated with my wife a week.
No.
That person is freaking significant. So the list of significant people in your life, whether it's your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, all of that. And you're going to ask 2 questions about the you. How do you understand this person to be? Why are they the way they are? Now, maybe you know the real answer. Maybe you're just thinking of an answer. I worked with a woman one time, and she came across as so miserable. I later understood that she was about 98 pounds. She had a grapefruit-sized tumor in her stomach. The woman was in agony and dying all the time. I think I'd be miserable too.
Yeah.
So how do you understand this person to be and why they're that way? Question 2 to the you. What do you believe they need most from you right now? Now, can you imagine as an employer putting down an employee on that list and answering that question to yourself just in your alone time? Because maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. The next step, if you choose to go even further, is whatever you came up with. What does this person need most from me right now? What does my son need most from me right now? What does my wife? We're going to come up with an answer that we think we should do. And I, by all means, say, please do it. Because everybody wants to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and how they want to do it. Let them do it.
Yeah.
Does it match their answer? Can we care enough and then go ask them? Ask my wife regularly. I want to be the greatest husband to you in the world. Okay? What is it that you need from me? And I mean that to the core. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, she might remarry, but he ain't going to be like me. That's the goal, right? That's the goal.
That's amazing.
If my wife's or your boss or your employees or your player or your coaches, if that answer matches yours, easy peasy. Do it. If it doesn't, how do we marry those two? And if what they want and need from you is, if it's reasonable, doable, and fair, you do it just a little bit past your comfort zone. And watch what happens to life. Watch what happens to life, but do it consistently. It's amazing what happens when we stop living for ourselves and more of that servant leadership part that we're talking about.
Dude, I love all of that. So you talk about, it's funny, the last time you were on the show, we talked about something that was created by somebody else, which is the 5 love languages, and how that ties in. And now this is something that you've created on your own, which is the 7 leadership languages. What are the leadership languages? Just give us a rundown so people can kind of hear them and maybe say that's my language, that's my language.
Absolutely. So we have goodies time. Goodies time refers to that leader who is bringing in, or you're inspired by somebody bringing in goodies. Now, I stayed at a job a month or so, a little bit too long because they had great goodies. It was sponsored, so the pharmaceutical reps were bringing this. I was eating full-blown dinners for lunch, So goodies time. It might be a cup of coffee. It could be all of those things. The next one is you have quality minutes. Now, quality minutes matter. You ever bump into the CEO of your company or see a big wig or whatever, and they just don't even make the time? You're not even on their radar, no eye contact, no head nod, no anything.
Just a number.
Just a number. I played for a coach one time, got me on the team, never spoke to me again the whole time I was there. So for some people, that stuff matters. Quality minutes. Can you spend 2 seconds or 5 minutes speaking to somebody about something that's not related to why they're there?
Yeah. That would actually, so these are the first times I'm hearing them broken down like this. I've heard the words, but I've never heard them broken down. When I think about when I was an employee, that was probably really big. That would really rank high for me.
Yeah.
Just to know that
Justin,
I'm not
you got plans for the weekend?
Yeah.
How you doing? What did you do this weekend?
Yeah.
You watched the game?
And then you also remember beyond that.
Right.
You remember what these people are passionate about. Because here's the understanding, and I know when I hire people full-time or when my contractors are working for me, they could give 2 shits about my company compared to me. They might care about the work they're doing, which they do. I only work
But it's not their baby.
People, but it's not their baby. So when I chat with them, okay, we talk about the work they have to do, but it's not just that.
We get to life.
It's how's your weekend? How's this? I have a guy working for me whose mom was in the hospital. It's follow up, how's your mom doing? It's the remembering. It's the connecting. So that's huge for me. It's probably why I give a lot.
Yeah, and when I go into and work with sports teams and things like that, one of the things we do for our forums, the first question when we get together as a team is, what's been your positive of the week? You would think that they're there bleeding, sweating, and doing all of this stuff, getting these wins and all of this stuff. 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with the sport they play.
Right.
It's about something. Oh, my grandmom, this or this or that. And I say, y'all, there's a person sitting next to him. Y'all shower together, for Christ's sakes. I mean, not together, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Did you know that? I say, no. I said, And they love that as much as the content that we're about to get into.
For sure.
So we have goodies time, we have quality minutes. Then we have knowledge and advancement, self-explanatory. I want to know what you know so then I can be you. Some people are really big on knowledge. I want to know. Then you have recognition and affirmation. Some people need that pat on the back. That's a huge, huge thing for some people.
And it's such a small, I've read articles about what small amount of people go home unrecognized or go home recognized. It's like 2%.
And seeing the part that they play in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that's our jobs as leaders to say that they matter. Even the custodian matters. Take a secretary and a custodian out of a building and see what happens.
Yes.
Take them out of your doctor's office and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
They matter. So the next one we have incentives. Now, my wife is a huge incentive person. I am not. And it's from my childhood. I brought home A's, all these A's one time, on my report card. I said, hey, Mom, can I get some more or extra or whatever it was? And she said, boy, I don't pay you to go do what you're supposed to do. So from living...
You learned at a young age.
I learned at that young age, incentives don't drive me. I am going to come and give you all I got to give every day anyway. So incentives may look like a trip, bonuses, competitions in the office, things like that. My wife thrives on that. And it's not a good or bad thing. It just is what it is. Some people thrive off of that. Then you have flexibility, and flexibility is twofold. And it really comes down to, can my ideas be flexibly implemented in this organization? I think about the quarterback coming to the sideline saying, Coach, I want an audible. Coach, this is happening. And the coach says, shut up, run the play.
Yeah.
Well, wow. That quarterback is out there getting the snot beat out of him, sees what's going on. So flexibility in that manner.
For sure.
Can I work in a flexible manner? That might not be the case everywhere you are, job-wise or wherever you are.
Sure.
But how it can it be? Somebody I worked with, a woman one time, she came, struggled to get in on time every day. But she had 2 kids. You're a single mom. The value that you're putting out, is worth keeping that value if you could come in 15 minutes later. We can't do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're 15 minutes late and you suck as an employee, that's
one thing, right?
And, there's a large organization, and I won't say names, there's a large organization in our town who they're very, very big on being exactly on time. If you are 5 seconds late, you get like a demerit. An X amount of demerits, you lose your job.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me right now? Like, you have no control over so many things, and when you talk about specifically single parents, which there's a lot of them.
Right. Hardest job in the world.
Hardest job in the world. I could never, ever, ever imagine what that's like on a regular basis. But to not have flexibility for people like that, especially when they're good employees, that's mind-blowing to me. And I feel like, from my standpoint, it's like me like talking down on employers. There's good ones, too.
Oh, absolutely.
I can honestly say, I think back to all of my jobs, which there were a number of them, most of which I was very successful at. None of my employees were good, so I have a bad taste in my mouth. None of them. There were good people within the organization that were in a leadership role, but when I look at the ultimate top and what had filtered down, like I've had good managers who I'm still friends with today, and so on and so forth. But it's interesting. I mean, that's why everybody needs to hire you. Like, that's why you need to go into these organizations to teach this, because it's a game changer.
Well, it's just like in personal lives, we get so busy being busy, we forget to be better. It's the same thing in corporations, same thing on teams. And teams are even harder because coaches, if they don't win, they lose their job.
Yeah.
So it's so focused on running the day-to-day and doing the day-to-day and being busy in that day-to-day that we forget and to be humble. When we were that person, what would we have liked? And now we live in shoulds, which is a bully word. Well, you should do this. You should already know, or you should be happy to have your job. And employees and people and leaders are going through so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
And, so setting some expectations. The last one is respect. So the leader 7, the 7th language is respect. And that's a really big one, as I mentioned before. And one of the things that I talk about from a respect standpoint is emails. Sometimes we get so busy being busy that the emails get sharp or condescending or very just egregious, and being able to start off, I call it the positive sandwich. You start off, with some bread and some loving, and then you get to the issue and into that. And there's ways that we can do this. Yes, we're all busy. But how we write an email and when we send it. I stay up and do late night work. I mean, now with a baby screaming at night, it's not guilt-free staying up late anymore, but I'll get back to that.
Yep.
But I will never send an email at 2 o'clock in the morning.
In about 18 years.
Yeah, right. But I'll never send an email at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know whose phone is on notifications and is dinging at night. And maybe now you got somebody at home arguing over you and you don't even know it of why your phone is ringing and dinging.
Yeah.
Or the anxiety that some employees have because they feel obligated to respond.
Yep.
So those are the 7, but then it's, how do you speak it casually? How do you speak it in those hard times? How do you set up some preface statement so when you have to have the hard conversation, you just made it easier? And at the end of the day, you just made it so much easier if we're living those 3 things, we're speaking the language, and we're doing some of the other leadership things. We make it easier for people to want to follow us because they know, like, and respect how we are. So when we come with something that is a massive change that we either agree with or don't, but the train has left the station, or if it's some bad news, it's so much easier to deliver it.
For sure. Dude, and that's such a huge thing. When I think of what you're saying, and obviously a lot of the context is within organizations, but that's life. We lead no matter where we are, no matter who we are.
Right.
And I was speaking at an event in Montana, and I was talking about I learn from every single person that I come in contact with. Therefore, in my opinion, everybody's a leader. They're leading me in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's minute or large, they're leading me in some way, shape, or form. I took my nephews to a 21 Pilots concert, and I learned from them by how they enjoyed it without worrying about who was around them. And they danced, and they waved their arms, and they rapped along with them, which, by the way, my 10-year-old nephew, signed him to a deal right now because he rapped along with every single word with 21 Pilots when I didn't even understand what they were saying. But I learned from them, and therefore they're leaders in a part of my life to say, let go of worrying about what other people are thinking. So when you're listening to this episode, and go back and listen again, because when I hear the things you're saying, it's so huge to implement that in all parts of my life. whether that's within my business and the people that work for me, whether that is, within my relationships with my family, with my loved ones, with the significant other, with all those people. I look at that and go, I can implement this into everything.
Well, yeah, because to be honest with you, I never thought I'd be talking about leadership.
Yeah.
I came in very, very heavy on work-life harmony. And I don't say balance because we live in America where we work. It's not going to be balanced all the time, but we can have harmony in both. And as I was writing, I was writing more about leadership, but it was, I didn't want to come in and be the typical, I'm leadership development. I never saw myself as that. I was really writing from a place of personal leadership. Mm-hmm. So many people get promoted and they don't know how to lead, but how do we lead ourselves personally first? And you're absolutely right. Whether you are the CEO, whether you're middle management, whether you're the custodian, doesn't matter. We can all lead. As an employee at one of those jobs I was mentioning, I found myself in a leadership position and I didn't have a leadership title at all. But how I came in every day, how I actively chose to walk in that place every single day, how I left, how I handled myself, how I was doing my best and being my best, the positive people there gravitated. And some people were even like, well, I want to write a book. Because at the time, I'm sitting to people next door to Barnes & Noble bringing back their book, and I'm signing it at the kiosk, know? And, I'm thinking about writing a book. And I said, you should. And I didn't realize I was the first person ever to tell them that. After I left there and I started doing You Evolving Now all the time, I get a manuscript in the mail of people's book being done.
That's awesome.
So the ready and the positive, you are that beacon for. But when the not ready or the negative get ready, they know where to go, because when they really wanted to talk about something that wasn't complaining, they came.
Yeah.
So making an impact, and then loving up and doing all of that stuff, it matters. So personal leadership first, and then we add some hard leadership skills.
You draw in what you give out. Like, that is something that's so true, and this could be a whole nother episode about how what you're like. Look, if you are somebody who's sitting there listening to this right now and they go, "Oh my God, I'm surrounded by negative people," check yourself. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you're necessarily that. Like, for me, I'm somebody who I get people that come to me and just share their life story, and that's what I draw in. But I'm also surrounded by positive people who are driven and hardworking, because that's what I am, and that's the beacon that I'm sending out, and that's what draws people in. But, like, if you are sitting there and you go, "Oh, man, everybody around me is so negative," check yourself, because there's a good chance that you are the beacon for the negativity. You are negative as well. But we don't realize it all the time.
Exactly. And once you change your language, you change your life.
Right.
So I'm very conscious about the words I choose to use.
And that's exactly why I was transitioning to this. So I'm glad you went there, and I'm glad it made sense from what I was saying, at least to you. You talk about these bully words.
Yeah.
And I know this is something you shared at Growth Now Movement Live on stage, about these words you never say to yourself, or you try not to say to yourself. We're not all perfect. But let's talk about that. Like, these bully words that we say to ourselves and also our loved ones.
Oh, yeah.
What are these words that we shouldn't be saying?
All right, here they go. But, if, can't, try, just, only, and deserve. And I'm going to throw in the perfect one that you mentioned. I'll share a little bit about that. But I'll give a quick rundown, because it's one thing to know them. It's another thing to know what to replace them with.
Right.
But, Justin, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, but you don't want to hear anything after that. Everything I said after that was wrong. So it's a semicolon. I'm sorry, this, semicolon. I was having a hard day or a bad day. It's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
And then I've said this to my kids sometimes, and they say, "No, Dad, it's okay." I said, "No, it's not. That's why I'm apologizing. It's not okay." So giving it permission for it not to be okay, because people who love you and care about you are going to pacify you. Right. So anyway, but only, what I say, just. Oh my goodness, I can't stand just and only. Well, around here, Reading Area Community College is the community college around here. And I use that as an example because I hear it so much around here, but in other areas of life. Oh, I just go to RAC. Or I only go to RAC, or I'm just an executive assistant. If I were to say that to you, you would want to punch me in the face.
Yeah.
Because I would have offended you.
Yep.
How do we think?
You only go to RAC?
Right?
Completely
If somebody would say it to you, you would be so offended, you would want to physically fight. But when we say it to ourselves, it's okay. No, when you multiply that over weeks, over months, over years, over time, how do you think you're supposed to feel about yourself when you talk like that?
Yeah. So
it's just eliminating that. Just and only. I blank this. I go here. Whatever it is.
Sure.
Should. That's a big one. once we start saying, well, you should, think about what you would go home and say to your wife or girlfriend or husband or wife. You should. Boy, ding, 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 ding. It's fight time. It's go time.
Yeah.
It's one of the most hurtful things. So what we really mean by you should or I should is really, I would like for you to. That's a fair thing that anybody could say. I would like for you to, instead of you should.
Yeah.
When we have can't. That's a word I struggle with because I can't grow wings out of my back right now here and fly out of this room. If I could, I'd be rich. You YouTube it. We'll collaborate. We'll go 50-50 on the proceeds.
Guys, stay tuned.
What can't really means is I don't want to, or it's hard for me. Me and math never got along. Knew I was never going to use it. My mind and what I do and who I am does not need that. But I can't say, that I can't do it or I couldn't do it. Truth is, I didn't freaking want to.
Right.
And it was very hard for me. That's fair statements. So we got but, if, only, just, try. I think I used this analogy on stage. I'm not sure if I did or not. But Justin, you're going to have a party this weekend, okay? Ask me right now to come to it.
Hey, I have a party on Saturday. You want to come?
Oh, ask me to come to the Growth Now Movement Live.
Oh, dude, Growth Now Movement Live next year, May 15th, 16th, 2020. Can you make it?
Yeah, I'm going to try to make it. Do you believe I'm coming?
No.
Okay, neither do we when we say that about ourselves or what we're going to try to do. I'm going to try that diet, or I'm going to try this, or I'm going to try that. Same way you didn't believe that crap that somebody said to you, we don't believe the crap we just said for ourselves and our future and our success. Try out. You're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And when we take that, I've had people argue with that. Well, I tried my best. No, do? Stop.
You do or you don't.
You do or you don't.
Yeah.
The other word is perfect. And I hear so many of us say it, and I know what we mean. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And I believe we don't behave perfectly. But I was actually listening on audio. This is probably like 20 years ago. It was a book on tape somebody had gave me, and it really helped me look at perfection in a different way. And it was from the Toltec, so a Native American philosophy of living. And it said, look at that tree over there. We don't look at that tree and compare it to that tree and say that's not perfect. It's a tree, and it's beautiful, and it should be here. We don't look at a star in the sky and say that star is not as good as that star is not perfect. We only learned that we weren't this or that or how to level ourselves based on going to school, sitting in rows, getting gold stars, getting grades and things like this. No, we are freaking perfect. You are perfect. We don't always behave perfectly, but you got a superpower that makes you great. If you choose not to use it, that's on you. If you choose not to be aware of it and know what it is, that's on you. And where I fall short, my wife excels. So how do we partner with people that we can build with and helps us to live that definition of success? So, yeah, I think we are perfect. I think we are. And the more we can say that to ourselves, the better. But also knowing that we always need to work on, grow, and really maximize our superpowers. Because I don't behave perfectly. I've worked on it and I've evolved. But I think it's okay to say we're perfect.
Yeah. Dude, I love that take on all that. And obviously this information has been completely incredible. And as you guys see, part of my growth is because I spend time with guys like Andre. And so I encourage you to reach out to him on social media. And how are all the good things? How do people get a hold of you?
You could go to youevolvingnow.com. And I've been asked this. Maybe I should have did it with the U because they say, is it you, the letter U?
It's YOU.
YOU, evolvingnow.com. You can go to Facebook, my Facebook page, Andre Young. Don't get it mistaken with Dr. Dre. We have the same name. So if he pops up, I'm the other Andre
It's
Young.
the other one.
LinkedIn, of course, with You Evolving Now, Andre Young. Please connect with me. I love to talk to you. If you are a business, if you're a university, you're a high school, if you're a person, I love to connect with great people wanting to do more evolved things.
I love it, man. And so, I wrap up all these episodes with 5 rapid fire questions, and I think I'm going to slowly transition out of that. One of the things that I'm really focusing on now is what is kind of happiness? And everybody defines it differently, but I believe that we can all achieve it. And most people don't think we can achieve it. And I think it starts with a word. And everybody starts with a different word. And I wear it on my wrist. I'm about to get a tattoo with it, which it'll say the word growth. And so my word is growth. And I know that if I live in growth, I'm constantly happy. If I'm constantly focused on improving, getting better, and it could be the stupidest parts of my life, but as long as I'm improving, that's my word, and I stick with it, and that's growth. So what is your word? What's the one thing you focus on to hopefully garner happiness?
My word has evolved quite a bit because my word has been evolved. So for me and my life, it's evolved. But for me and what I want to do in this world, what my purpose is, what I can die happy doing is impact. You see this card here. We're in my cigar room, and I have to give a shout out to my wife, Sarah. You are amazing, baby. She built this cigar room that we're sitting in here having this interview. And but back to my word is impact. And I want to be able to make an impact on this world and in people's lives. And for Father's Day, my kids gave me a card, and my older son, Andre, he's 16, he said, "Happy Father's Day. You mean so much to me and have an impact on everything. Love you." And it almost brought me to tears because everything that I've wanted to do and hoped that I was giving, my son captured that word. He didn't know that that was my word. But the fact that I chose and choose to live it, and also being able to modify it, because just like with your kids, I've had to go to him and say, "What is it that you need from me?" Sometimes he says, "You need to back off. You're too evolving now, and that's got to be okay." We ask that question. We have to be able to accept and be able to be evolved enough to accept that answer and not dukes up or disconnect. So my word for me is evolve. To do for others is to impact.
Dude, I love it, man. And here's what I can say to that. I know that you live and constantly and you constantly evolve, and that's a word that you live by. But I promise you, if you focus on impact, the happiness follows, and you're living proof of that right now. So if you guys are listening, and this is the first time you're kind of hearing how I'm going to wrap up these shows, think of your word. What's your word that you feel when you hear it, you're like, that's it. And it makes an impact on you. And it could be impact, it could be growth, it could be evolve, it could be fun. I don't even care what it is, but think about that word and start living your life focused on that word. Because when you do that, the happiness will follow, and the life that you want to live will follow, man. Andre, thank you so much for coming back on, man. This was a blast.
Absolute pleasure.
This is
incredible. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.